I'm challenging the longevity that you're speaking to. I think the longevity, while longer in the career, I still think the wall comes in at 30 years old. I no longer think the peak can be achieved before the age of 21 or 22. We are in a whole new era. You said it best: conditioning, physios, physical maturation. I'm also going to say the depth of the game is better, and there's more quality players through 20, 30, 50 in the world. Now, but Father Time is undefeated, Alvin. And I'm here to tell you, you look at the stats, you look at the numbers. At some point, you're a step slow. At some point, the racket speed's just not as big. It's just not giving you the same service winner or ace it was giving you 2 years ago, let alone 5. So I'm challenging, throwing the red flag at you right now, Alvin Owusu, about, is it pushing it later? Or is the tour getting tougher and you have to do more within the same 8-year, give or take, time frame? Because we know statistically, after 30, unless you're one of the greats of all time, you might be done already.
And with that, I'll say welcome back to another episode of the Best Three Podcast. I'm Alvin. That's Torrey. So you caught us in the thralls of a very this conversation has been going on for probably 2 weeks now. If you were with us, probably closer to Monte Carlo. I'm not sure when this is going to come out, but we were having a conversation about Arthur Feast. This all comes back to the French. We were having a conversation about Arthur Feast, and I think it can't be if it was you or me mentioned that he was like 22 years old. And after the show, we both happened to do the research, and it was like, oh, Arthur Feast is actually 20. And that shift of 2 years really changed how we both looked at him. And it was, I'll even put the text message up on the screen here for the viewers. Like, we both hit it at the same time. It's like, oh, that's a different conversation. That's one that needs to be had, because a player who is 14 in the world at age 22 is a lot different than a player who's 14 in the world at age 20 and climbing, right?
And climbing and still approaching physical, let alone mental, and game maturity, 1,000%.
Yeah, and so
check out the ATP for having that stat wrong, by the way.
Yeah, well, the kind of the takeaway here is like, okay, if we're looking at a player who is 20 years old, what is the actual expectation for that player? Or maybe even the inverse. A player who wins a Grand Slam or becomes top 5 in the world, what does their trajectory actually look like? And if we can better understand that, then we have a lens through which we can evaluate players who are currently on tour and say, hey, like to your original point about 30 being the door closed, do our players born in the year 1998, I'm looking at you, Alexander Zverev, and you, Taylor Fritz, and you, Andre Rublev, and Tommy Paul, do these players really have a chance to win a Grand Slam before, they're age 27 now, before they hit 30 in a couple years?
I hate to put my main man Francis Tiafoe on that same
list.
Yeah,
Francis is right there. It's just he's a little bit further down the rankings right now. So I think, we decided we were going to have this conversation to kind of talk a little bit about the nuances of age on the ATP Tour. There's a little bit historical, data to be considered, and I want to lay out those now, right?
Yep.
So typically, players win their first Grand Slam around the age of 23. That is the typical number. Players hit the top 5 in the ATP around 22. Let me go in the reverse order. It's usually top 10 at 22, also top 5 at 22, Grand Slam at 23. Those are the kind of markers you're looking for a would-be Grand Slam champion. Now, in our time, we've seen the greats tend to do things a little bit differently.
Much different.
And we recognize it pretty early. The likes of Pete Sampras wins his first slam at 19.
Yep.
Fed 21, Rafa 19, Novak 20. Today, Carlos 19, first Grand Slam. So with that being said, talking about age, let's kind of use that lens to talk about what we think we have left from certain players that are playing right now.
Let me take a step back. I'm going to come back 10,000 feet, Alvin. You remember, Alvin, when you were playing tennis in the juniors and you were 12 years old, let's say playing a match at Hunlow. There's
Sure.
been a million matches that played at Hunlow.
Love Hudlow.
I'm sure there was a 10-year-old that was playing in your age division.
Sure.
You may remember a name, you may not. That I bet there was a player who was pretty good, who was either your age, playing up, doing well, or a player who was playing up in your age group who was 2, maybe 3 years behind you, who you knew was well ahead of the curve. And quite frankly, wow, kids competing with us.
Yeah.
I remember going to San Antonio. I had, feeling good about myself as a coach, I had 7 players playing the boys 14s.
14's hard courts in San Antonio, is that right?
San Antonio, 14 hard courts, right? One of my players draws this little lefty. Got goggles on, Alvin. Looks like he's 10. No more than 11. I think he ended up being 10. And this kid looked like he should have been dropped off at after school care at a grade school. I mean, and here we are at a national 14. One of my players, who was at the time probably 10, 12, maybe 15 in the South at the lowest, plays this player. And my player's fast, Alvin, very fast. And you were fast. This player may have been a tad faster than you. His overrun form was unreal. He was hanging with the likes of the Sco Jenkins and Nathan Saxes. Was very savvy. Shout out to my boy Nathan Wheeler.
I knew it was gonna be Nathan Wheeler.
Nathan Wheeler draws this lefty from Chicago that I heard had moved to Atlanta. I had never seen this kid before. I've been in Atlanta for a long time. Kids wearing goggles. The match goes on. This kid at 10 years old, Alvin, pulls a shady call like he'd done it before. But unlike most kids who I've seen cheat, this kid who kind of avoid your stare, look away, pull the hat down, Alvin. You've seen the hat move when it goes out. This kid called it out and looked over at my boy Wheels to say, let me see how pissed off you're going to be about this call. Completely comfortable with the confrontation. Alvin, I didn't know Donald Young at the time. But Donald Young showed me a level of maturity and competition that I had not seen before in a 10-year-old.
Yep.
It did not shock me years later to know that Donald Young was going to be one of the top players in the age group. Here's the point I'm making, Alvin. Donald Young was older, like an Anakin Skywalker. He was older at that time than Nathan was. And Nathan was a pretty savvy young player. Why do I mention this? Because the best younger players are always those kind of outliers.
Sure.
And there's not 20 Donald Youngs. There was one.
Right.
And every age division has them. So that's why and mind you, and this is what I think fits in our conversation, Donald Young did not reach number 1 in the world as much as he was a very good junior and a very good player and a phenomenal talent. Another lefty, by the way. I feel like that's why the phenomenal ones of the phenomenal end up being GOATs. They're always just a little different. So we can't put this into a stats column. But what I want to say is that when you look at the 22s, the 23s, I think Agassi won his first one like 25, and he after going pro at 18. These players are still pretty phenomenal.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. They're just getting there at another time for whatever reason. But we almost have to take all of those Grand Slam winners and look at the tour for what it truly is and let the top, I hate to say it, let the top go off to the side. Now, with that said, Alvin, I'm going to make another point because the point.
I can't necessarily agree with taking the top and putting them off to the side because there actually aren't that many players playing high level tour tennis at all. The number's not that big. It's 100. It's
But the
100.
ones that have won, Alvin, if you look at the 20, the 22, and the 24, 25 for Novak,
Yeah, 25 today, I
they
think.
skew the numbers.
They
So
do.
you can't say,
Oh,
Alvin,
that top. I thought you meant like those who win Grand Slams being the top. You're talking
no,
about
no, 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 no. Winning
the
Grand
big
Slams
three.
is a different deal. I'm talking about the ones that have approached that pinnacle at such a young age. Pete won 14.
You
His
know,
first one's at 19.
we had no intentions of talking about the big three in this particular conversation because,
Correct.
like you said, like their numbers skew everything. They're kind of an anomaly that you want to take away. But
20,
really,
22, what is that? 67, Alan?
right,
67?
yeah. But
Last 80?
I think in there's a reason why they have so many, and I think that reason is really tied into this conversation, right?
I'm listening. I'm
the
listening.
way the
What's your
way
reason?
the way that we expect, like, so this is what we've been talking about, is more or less a predictive model of like, if someone is going to do X in their career, you're going to see these few things happen at these certain
Before that.
ages on the way to
For
X,
sure.
right?
For
If
sure.
that is win Grand Slam, right, that typically happens by the age of 23 for the first one. So you're going to see that player enter, like, most of them are into the top 500 like very young, like by the age of 18, right? They'll hit top 100 by like very soon after that, and then it's 50 and 10 and 5, like in very short order, right? I think the reason why the big three were able to gobble up so many, I think they actually either had the good fortune of having or created a weak generation behind them. Those players that came up behind them actually just weren't good enough. They weren't good enough. If you take the big three out, I surmise to say that those guys would have never put up multiple Grand Slams. You would have had a sporadic bunch of people winning 2, 3, and 4 Grand Slams here and there. I don't think there were any great players. Obviously, there weren't. They didn't make
I,
it
I,
out.
I'm going to 1,000% disagree with you with vehemence, with vehemently disagreeing with you because
Hmm.
I feel it's the opposite. This is a classic half full, half empty. They were so good, they were able to capitalize on that run for an extended period of time. And the others were as good. It just shows you the greatness. Here's where I'm going to go back to basketball with you for a little bit. Alvin, when I was coming out of junior high school ish, actually going into junior high school, it was, yeah, grade school, about to go into junior high school. There was these two players. One of them played for Michigan State, one of them played for Indiana State. And I'll give you a little quick backstory. The one that went to Indiana State had actually been to Indiana, was from Indiana. And tall white boy, phenomenal
French
jumper,
lick.
right? And I'm mentioning this to you, Alvin, because it was one of the most prolific games, Michigan State against Indiana State. I don't think either have been to a final. Michigan State
Michigan
has.
State. Yeah,
Obviously,
yeah.
Indiana State is not. This player was a former Bobby Knight pupil and just couldn't take Bobby Knight. Do you realize, Alvin, how rare it is that Magic and Bird were in the final of the NCAA, and a year later, Alvin, were in the finals of the NBA championship? That went on for the next 9 years. I want to say it was 4-3 with the Celtics and the Lakers and their teams getting that point. Now, Alvin, what's the chances of a couple of freshmen getting to the finals of NCAAs and getting the finals of the NBA a year after? I'm not sure many
Well,
players have done that. Now, here's the reason why I
there's
say
actually some good reason why that can't happen
no,
these
no, no.
days.
But let's stay with it though, because you've seen top players come out every year. What
Yeah,
has and I submit to you this one reason. Were they simply that good for their age at that time? Now, we're not talking about the team. We're not talking about how good the Celtics already were. We're not talking about the Lakers had a 20-year MVP in Kareem. I get all that. I'm a basketball player. I get all that.
okay,
I'm
yeah, but
asking,
we can't have that conversation without stating the obvious that those teams were
100%.
already good when they got there.
Nor would we, right? But I'm mentioning to you that both these players were the stars, not the bench warmers, on these teams. And Alvin, my problem with the stats is the stats are littered with phenomenal phenoms that made those records happen. So to me, You already got a phenomenally talented group, and now you're measuring the phenomenally talented among the phenomenally talented. And guess what? Anytime I got 6 or 7 out of 80 slams that are spoken for, it's probably going to skew my numbers.
Well,
And
and
that's
you
what
know,
I'm saying.
I'll give you this, since we're talking a lot about age, and this is almost a conversation around predictiveness, right? Like
Okay.
how to predict, right? Federer comes out. So Federer is, let's whatever age he is when these things are happening for him. He's 21. Nadal is 5 years younger than him, right?
Yep.
The age gap is 5 years. Okay, so then Nadal pushes him, right, and it becomes a rivalry. And then Novak kind of not hits the scene, but Novak is right behind Nadal. He's 37. Who was right behind Novak? Nobody. There was nobody. There were a bunch of less thans.
So
And that's
let me,
I'm
I
just saying
love your point,
there
but
should
I
have
will
been
not give,
someone there to push Novak. There should have
I
been someone
will not
aged
take
35 now.
the statement of they created a vacuum. I will accept the statement of they were so good that you appreciated how once in a while they were. Now, I know that may seem like a technicality to you.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, because you have because it's not a hypothetical question. We have like a real name to put there, like someone like a Gail Monfils, who is still playing right now, who is just a little bit younger, maybe 1 year younger than Novak, maybe if they're not the same age.
There, no, Gail's older,
Okay, so there's your representation right there.
100%.
It's the Monfises. It's
Donald
the
Young, who I mentioned, should have been that player. Just so we're talking.
right. So the
Sko was the same age as Novak. Oh, sorry, Novak's younger than Sko. Was same age as Monfils, as Murray, same age as Jeremy Chardy, same age as Murray. In fact, might be a little younger than that group. My main man, uh, who played Victor Troitsky. You remember who was the top 10, top 20 player
right.
back in the day? There were several of those guys back in the day that were all in that age group. I am mentioning the year ahead of Malvin had guys like Joe Wilfred Songa, had guys like my main man,
Well,
the
it's
Cypriot.
It's
Uh,
Nishikori. It's
yeah,
yeah, Nish.
but to
He's
your
two
point,
years. He's 2 years behind Novak. So like that is
Baghdadis was who I was talking about. Baghdadis and Joe Willie were just 2 years ahead. None of them went to 39, 38. I'm just mentioning to you, Alvin, that these players, I think what you're speaking to, and I think it's the problem with even a lot of the sportscasters, we start looking at the greats as if that's how you're supposed to do it. And I think, and I take exception to that, I think any player who's at that level is phenomenal. But then you're put into this ultra small pool where you've been the biggest fish in every pool you've been in your entire life. And now we really see who is really the biggest, junkyard dog, so to speak, in that situation. And I'm going to tell you, Alvin, that to me goes a little bit more to where the championship mindset kicks in, who really wants it the most, who maximizes opportunities. I think now you got a whole lot of different things you're talking about, but you're still talking about the best of the best. And I know you know that, and I know we agree on that. I'm
yeah.
talking about now,
Given all that,
Father Time is undefeated. And you made a point, and I'm not calling you out on it because I agree with you. We have pushed the envelope deeper into careers. It's no longer 20. Leighton Hewitt would not happen today. And
I mean, Leighton
ironically,
Hewitt barely happened. Like he was happening, and then it happened pretty quickly.
and and he was a better Michael Chang. Michael Chang would not happen today. Mensick is as close as
Well,
we got.
let me ask you, what are you saying would not happen? What would not happen?
A 17-year-old winning a Grand Slam would not happen today.
Oh, sure, fair.
The
Yeah.
players are simply
Not on the
too
men's
good,
side.
too seasoned. There's too many of them.
Yeah.
And you would have to go through absolute darn near walking death to get through 6 players that good in the world today. And I'm also saying to you, Alvin, with that being said, while they're all getting better and approaching their prime in the 22, 3, 4, 5, 26, 27, 28 is about the prime. I would also tell you while we've extended the time frame, We only are talking about that in the media because Fed, Rafa, and Novak have made the 30s not be the drop off at 30 that most players are.
And that will be I think that's where we hit this ain't normal, because that's not going to happen anymore, right? And I think that's
won't happen anymore. But it's not because it's not. They were that good. Serena was up there too.
So not anytime. I'm going to say not anytime soon, and that's really just because of kind of what we're talking about today, right? So when we talk about prime, like a player's prime, or I'll even go back, right? The way that we've decided to categorize like where a player is in their career, and there's kind of 4 stages, right? The next gen, as we call next gen, not necessarily the ATP's version of next gen. We're calling anyone who's under 21 and under, right?
Yep.
And then once you get to 22 to 26, we're considering that you are approaching your prime, right?
Yep.
And then a player's prime is 27 to 31. And then we consider 32 to 32 and older to be past your prime, right? So for that particular conversation, when you look at it, right, obviously the likes of Novak Djokovic, Grigor Dimitrov, I mentioned a little bit earlier, Keen Shikori, about like
Torrey, Batista
Agut. Like, there's a lot of guys who are out there still playing. Obviously, Novak's performing at high level, but these guys are at that age. You don't really expect them to contend for Grand Slams. Let's even take Novak out of this because I think he's an anomaly. It's really like it gets hard to do the thing 7 times in 2 weeks. Best out of 5 sets. Okay, like we've seen Grigor show up and look old a few times in the last 6-9 months, play great tennis, and then the next day, like, oof, my neck, my back, my neck and my back, right? Yeah. So that's kind of why that's not really something that we expect to see. But I think the kind of focus of this conversation is there's a list of players that are ranked inside the top 20 who are in their prime, juxtaposed against a group of players who are ranked in the top 20 who are technically next gen. And that is the beautiful thing, because you've got these young guys being the, kind of reverse order, your Artur Fises, your Holger Runes, your Carlos, 4-time Grand Slam Carlos Alcaraz is technically not yet approaching his prime.
Thank you.
Which is crazy talk.
Thank you.
And then you've got players like Alexander Zverev, Taylor Fritz.
Thank you. Tiafoe,
Alexander Rublev, or Andre Rublev, right? So
Daniel.
And then your fan favorite. God bless. I can't. God bless it, Daniel Medvedev. Grand Slam champion, 3-time Grand Slam finalist, Daniil Medvedev. These guys are all technically in their primes, but they are fighting. They're not only fighting Father Time, but they're also fighting history. In that those that will become champions they're present right now. These guys are they're nipping at the bud. Carlos has won Grand Slams. Obviously, Jannik Sinner, who's 23 years old and now has 3 Grand Slams, but he won his first one at 22. He's actually a very typical Grand Slam champion. Like 22, do the thing. We'll see. I think he's got a lot of space ahead of him. But I'll take a break here and I'll go ahead and pass the baton to you.
I want to go back and give a shout out to and I did in my research, Alvin, there were 7 of the 13 players that are 32 and above that are top 100 in the world. And I would include 8, even though one of these guys is a very lowly, unfortunate 162 in the world right now. But he happens to have 2 Grand Slams, so I got to include him, and that's Mr. Stanislas Wawrinka. Alvin, each 7 of the 13, 8 if you include Stan, were all former top 10. So I would even tell you that the number after 30 is actually smaller. If you take that 7 out of 13, you're really left with 6 players out of that are 30 and above, which is kind of weird to think about it, because now you're looking at a real drop off. Like, you're talking about walking the plank. I mean, it's like 30 gone. I mean, it's, and I won't get to the actual numbers. But let's make sure we understand and appreciate why we're mentioning these names, because these names have literally become household names in the past 15 to 20 years. You have to start with the Stanislas Wawrinka, who at age 40 is the elder statesman of the crew. you have to mention and give mad props to my main man Gail Monfils, who's still putting in work at 38
See,
years old.
I would take Stan out of the conversation. No, and no shade to Stan, but like Stan is I'm glad he's playing, but like as far as like contending, staying those
He's
months
in
without winning.
retirement status. He just doesn't know it
Yeah,
yet,
yeah,
and
but
he might as well. Maybe he's doing it just to stay in shape. I don't know.
yeah,
But
but on
he is,
the other side of the coin though is like Monfils is actually having a fantastic season. Like he is playing some legit good tennis.
and relevant
Relevant, yeah.
for the top one in the world.
He might be seated at French Open this year. Like he's still
Doing the
involved
thing,
in the conversation.
as you say, doing the thing.
Yes, he's doing the thing.
So 38 years old now.
That's wild.
I don't think anybody misunderstands his age, or that and Gail has always been one of my favorite players. When Sko was his age, there were so many stories we had about Gail when he was playing. I got to say this one story about Gail, go off topic for a little bit. One of my favorite stories of Gail Monfils was at Roehampton. And Gail, I hope you're watching this episode, because I still remember this to this day. Me and Sko Sr. are watching. We're behind Gail's court at Roehampton. There was this crazy long point, Alvin, and of course, Gail's sliding all over the place like he always does. Alvin, he slides past us, going backwards for a shot like he always was doing back in the day. And his shoe gets caught in the fence. Between the grass,
Yep.
the fence, you can appreciate
it.
A shoe goes through.
A little wedgie back there. Yeah.
Wedgie back there. He pulls, he tugs, he throws up this crazy lob. He pulls, he tugs, the shoe stays, his foot and sock come out, right?
Yep.
He plays 6 more shots, Alvin. Playing the kid is probably top 10 in the world at the time. Some Asian kid who was great, good left. And the kid sees with one shoe, so he starts drop shotting him and lobbing him, right? Gail, 8 shots later, ends up winning this point. Okay? As was common for Gail, he yells out this, hey, like, I'm just, But what got me at the end of this point was he comes up to me and Sko Sr. We've seen him at numerous times by now. By the way, he won the Junior Australia. He won Junior French.
Junior Wimbledon.
Wimby, getting ready. This is the tune-up Wimbledon in Roehampton. And he gives us this little kind of mouth click, tongue click, and a wink like, you like that? I was so impressed with his presence of, I'm just doing this for fun. This is fun for me. That I was so just enamored with, if I'm playing at a tournament like this, me, Torrey Hawkins, playing this tournament, this level, and I happen to win a point like that, it's going to take me a second just to embrace what just happened.
Right, yeah.
See, that was big. He's not only embraced it, he expected to win it and was hoping it would happen 4 more times. He was like, I got up today hoping I would have a crazy point like this. And the next 10 years has shown Gail Monfils has gotten his fair share of those points. I just had to say that, Alvin, because that's a player that is enjoying the game of tennis. And I just had to mention that to you to say, I've watched this kid since he was 15, 16 years old. I remember Gail Monfils crying, laying on the middle of the court, bawling because he didn't make the cut at 16 years old, U.S. Open in the qualies years ago at the U.S. Open, 01 maybe, when I was up there with a few other players, but before Sko. And I was kind of laughing at, people don't realize his story. I won't make this a Gail Monfils tribute. We'll have time for that one later when he decides to hang him up. But I say this to tell you, these players are pretty special. I know we agree on that point. But Wawrinka, 40, Gail, 38, you can't get past Mr. 37. Novak Djokovic, current 25 Grand Slams himself, at a lowly number. What is my boy now?
He's ranked 5 in the world.
Number
right now.
5 in the world.
Yeah.
Let's not forget the fact that we're talking about Novak, who's still dangerous, and with the right sun, moon, and star alignment, he might just have a chance to win one more. But let me go down the rest of the list, Al, because Batista Agut was a former number 9 in the world, who's now at 53. You got Katie Nishikori, who you mentioned earlier, who was a former 4 in the world, I might add, who As you know, he's had his fair share of injuries, and let's face it, he's a shell of what he used to be. But Nishikori is now at 66, but former number 4. David Goffin, who was a former number 7. Grigor Dimitrov, who at 33 is the highest ranked outside of Novak. At number 17 in the world, was a former top 3 in the world.
So,
And
what
of
do you,
course,
but what are you
Carreno
telling me?
Busta.
What are you telling me? What are you
What
trying
I'm
to tell me?
telling you, Alvin, is you got to take those 7 to 13 out of it because they're top 10 in the world.
I think that's
They know how
obvious
to
though. Like
play.
no one's gonna disagree with you. Like they're old. You
Well,
can't. They
but
don't.
here's where you understand. I'm not talking about you're going to disagree with me on the tennis. I know you get me on that. I'm telling you, if those players had not been top 10, they would not still be out there today. They would have retired at 30. So the number is closer to 6, 30 and above. Now, Alvin, you're talking about a bell curve. Usually a bell curve is low, it slopes up, it slopes down. This one has a draconian drop off. And I'm telling you, Alvin, that's outside of prize money, parents' money, the money that's involved in the game now, they didn't have when they were in the first 5-10 years. These guys are simply taking advantage of rankings, system, prize money, and such to help them in their later years. And hey, hats off to them. They've earned it. No different than we see a lot of top players in other sports, football, basketball, LeBron. Let's face it. I'm not sure LeBron's at his prime anymore, Alvin. I think you would agree with me on that. But LeBron is still playing because he can. And I think he's the Novak of basketball. And I say that to tell you, every other player that's 30 in the world, or a player in the NBA that's over 30, 31, that's not a former champion, that's not a former 30-point-a-game player, is probably already hung up the Jordans by
Sure.
now.
And I
And
think the
and
other
and the one more point I want to make, and that spells doom for a 27 through 29-year-old who is playing and hasn't won one. I loved your point earlier about the not yet prime, approaching the prime, playing the in their prime. And that's the real test of tennis right now, is this group of about 30 to 37, 22 to 25s playing against a bunch of 27 through or 27s through 30s. And those two come into grips. And Alvin, you heard it right here. At the end of this year, in the next 18 months, we could have an exodus of another 15 to 20 players in the top 100. And we haven't even talked about players like Yao Fonseca and others who are coming up. And we could be completely recycling the whole group of players now. And that's the storyline. It isn't the old
there's
guys.
a
It's
there,
the prime that are about to retire that won't make it to old guys.
they're not about to retire, but because I think that's the part about the advancements in science and strength and conditioning, right? Like someone like a Taylor Fritz or an Alexander Zverev or an Andre Rublev, who are all 27 years old right now, can continue to play and become the Grigor Dimitrovs of
They
the,
will replace Grigor and
yeah, but that
Novak
doesn't, but for the sake
and your
of this
boy
conversation
Nishikori.
though, once you get to a certain point, you're playing, but you're not a factor. I think that's the main difference, right? You're still playing, but
but I'm going to go further.
I don't expect
Those
to see
players
you contending for
were not top
championships.
10. A lot of these are you mentioned 3 players. I
And
mentioned 7.
yeah, but I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. It's okay. So let's look at the rest of them in that same age group, right? You've got Tommy Paul and Francis Tiafoe. They have both been top 10 before. They both clipped the top 10. So
That's it.
they're
Keep
there.
going.
But
Keep
I think
going.
for the sake of yeah, those two, Rublev is top 10, Ferrando top 10, Taylor's top 10, Zverev's top 10. But what I'm saying is the part that worries me, right? It's not the 30 and plus group. They're out of the conversation except for Novak, because he gets the Tim Duncan benefit of the doubt.
Yep.
It's the
Good analogy.
If these guys in the next 18 months don't win one and they start to move through and out of their prime, right? The players doing the majority of the winning are all 23 and under. So it's actually there's a weird vacuum right now of players between the age of 24 and 26 who are in the top like 30. There aren't many of them. And for those who are there approaching they're just about to on paper hit their prime. And I'm looking at you, Felix Auger-Aliassime, Like, do you think Felix is going to win a Grand Slam title in his career? Right. He's 24 years old, and we can already go, nope, because you would have done it by now if
You would
you
have
could
done
have.
it by now.
Yeah, and he's actually going backwards. Same thing with Stefanos Tsitsipas. Like Tsitsipas was on the track, right? He is 26 years old. He's made 3 Grand Slam finals, right? As recently as 2023, he finaled the Australian Open. So lost to Novak, but he's been there, but now we're trending the wrong direction. He's getting older and going backwards.
And going backwards. And Alvin, I would even tell you there's 3 other players, maybe 5 other players. I won't name all the names that didn't even reach that high. That are, and as is typical with the tour, that will probably not make top 10 at the way they're tracking. And they are in the teens. They're in the teens / 20s that you kind of like, So the vacuum you speak of is real. The current 20, you mentioned even your boy Talon Griegsberg. He's one of those older players that has always been knocking the door.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Talon has the talons, to get any higher. And Alvin, and I'm going to tell you, and I mentioned this to you in the Australian Open, and I told you, Alvin, then. I said, Alvin, I'm seeing a really weird changing of the guard right now. I saw 7 players, including Leonard Tien, including Bashar Barretti, including Yao Fonseca, include all the. I said, Alvin, I'm seeing players who are hitting the belt off of the ball.
Yeah.
And they're showing these players, these older players, buddy, you guys are old. You're a step slow. You're just a little bit, and mind you, you're good. We're young. And the game is getting more physical, getting faster, and you are no longer in your prime. And I'm telling you, Alvin, I think that vacuum will be filled very quickly. I just hope it's the same quality of tennis and these guys aren't one and dones. I don't think it's tracking backwards. In other words, I don't think the peak is going to come back to 22, 23. I just think that the peak is farther, but I think that the drop off, the plank, is even quicker because at that point in time, while you're more in shape, you're not as fast. You're not as powerful. Your core coverage isn't there. And any player whose game depends on that extra step, as has been the case for the last 25 to 30 years. Michael Chang, Alvin, lost a lot more matches after he won the French. Leighton Hewitt had a 2 or 3 year run. He was the better improved, new and improved version of Michael Chang. And after him, I got to be honest, look at the players their game was built off of speed. Alvin, look at it. They have not had the staying power. So I'm only mentioning to you to say, if your game is built, and to be honest, Alvin, and you heard it right here, Alcaraz and Sinner both. They're both pretty quick players. Sinner's game, to me, is a little more well-rounded. Alcaraz's game depends on speed. You heard it right here. I'm going to put it out there. I give him 5 years. His peak will not be 28, 29. You heard it right here. I got to say it. Here's why. Because it's so speed dependent. He won't be that fast at 28.
I think that people. Okay, this is not on the rundown, but we're gonna go ahead and go there.
Let's go there.
When we talk about Carlos, okay, shit. All right, we're going there. When we talk about Carlos Alcaraz, right? People get really caught up in the flair, right? All this, like the big shots. Yep. And all this stuff, like it's a fun brand of tennis to watch, and it's effective, and it's exciting, and it wins. Yep. He's pocketed 4 Grand Slams at this point. But here's why I'm going to surprise you, and I'm not going to really push back on that because he does. There are some things if you force yourself to be critical that you feel like they don't age well. One, he does not win easy points. He doesn't have a big enough serve, and that is not because of his. He doesn't really have any technical deficiencies. He's only 6 foot tall. He's not that big. Not a big dude, right? So, and then the speed part. He is so fast that his speed is a weapon. His speed causes you to think not just twice, think 3 times about where you're going to hit a ball. And then he can get to things, and then he gets the balls that most players would be on a little bit on defense. He can kind of do it neutral on some of those defensive balls. But like to your point, and this is yeah, we had no intentions of going here with this conversation. I don't disagree with you. He's not going to be I would be shocked. I would be shocked if he's top 5 when he's 30. If he's still playing
If
when
he's
he's
still
30.
playing. There
Yeah.
now, there, and
Yeah.
that buttons up my point, Alvin. And anybody with more average, we're going to say, because they're all good athletes, average speed, you're already slow.
Yeah. Well,
And this is in NFL football for running backs. This is in point guards in basketball. You had to have been phenomenally fast, younger, to be above average fast at 30, and so on and so on. Junior tennis, your top quick water bug types are phenomenally fast at 12, 13, 14, and at 18, they're not as fast.
I might even contradict myself right here. This is gonna sound stupid. But because when you watch him play, he can literally hit players off the court. So it's like I think it's his speed that is his superpower. Without it, he's still really, really good. He's special.
You're talking about Carlos.
Yes, he's
Yeah,
special
yeah,
because of his
yeah.
speed.
Right.
So as the speed starts to deteriorate over, he's 20, he'll be 22, I think, in a couple weeks. In the next 6 years, as the speed goes down, there is something that goes up, though, which is his experience.
Can we take a quick trip to Coach's Corner?
We need music for it.
I have often said there is a correlation of ball speed and foot speed.
Sure.
The players hit the ball really big, Alvin, hit the ball almost bigger than they can cover the court. And so that puts them at a disadvantage. And this is for any junior, any adult. This is for, a college player. College is a little different because they're all in pretty darn good shape and pretty good at the prime of their life in that sense of the word, as far as they've been to at that point in time. At the moment that your ball speed is bigger, while it's a weapon, it's also a bit of a liability because you cannot return your ball being returned. You're quick when your ball speed is X and your foot speed is X times 2 because you are faster and able to handle said ball. You hit a big ball when your ball speed is X times 2 versus your foot speed. At a certain point in time, when ball speed becomes bigger, you are more error prone. You are more, you have to take chances because you know that's how you win points. This is the perennial Juan Martín del Potro type of game style. You just have to go for shots. That's what you do. You won't catch up to the ball, and you don't care because you're playing Russian roulette, and you don't mind it because you can make the shot. The quicker type players, I'm talking about your Carlos Alcaraz right now. A few years back, it was Caden Shakori. A few years back behind them, it was Leighton Hewitt. You can go back to Michael Chang. These players are fast. I mean, crazy fast, like not even close to fast. Guys like James Blake were phenomenally fast. They just ran down balls. They could hurt you in the corner while after running down your ball. And these are the kind of players I'm mentioning, Alvin, at the foot speed and ball speed. But unfortunately, as you get older, your foot speed just isn't as fast. And that's where I'm really getting at with this whole situation is that while the footwork, the speed, at some point when you start to slow down, you have to now develop a different way to win. And honestly, you haven't really worked on that a lot. You always got to that ball, right? And so, I look at Michael Jordan when he was 22, 23, dunking on 3 people, coming in with a helicopter move under the goal, and by 33, 34, shooting fadeaway jumpers. I mean, the guy was still every bit as good, but he was winning a different way. And at the end of the day, that's the part of you seeing the decline and where Father Time is undefeated.
I'll say this: Novak Djokovic, right, as an example, poor example. He's obviously gotten slower, right? That's what happens. He's 37, but Novak makes the court feel small.
He does,
right? Tennis court is compared to a basketball court, compared to a football field. It ain't that big. It ain't that big.
Okay.
So if you can think your way through, start to think your way through your tennis, you can shrink where the ball might go. Yep. Therefore, not needing to be as fast. You're not guessing.
His game isn't speed dependent, to your point.
Yes, yeah, and I think in tennis you can kind of get away with it if you're
You can kind of tweak
smart.
the geometry of it a little
Yes,
bit.
this is how you. Oh, this is your old man tennis, right? As we're still on the corner here for the coaches, right? You start to like. This is the back you down version of tennis. Like I'm just gonna force you to hit the ball in this area. The whole court is not an option. So I think eventually what you'll start to see with your Carlos Alcarazes, even your Yannick Sinners, is the same thing you see with your Novak Djokovic. Is at 33 plus. It's like we're not getting into these crazy rallies that make no sense. I'm taking away a lot of your options because I'm not
time
exactly
and options.
Exactly. He's not gonna be backing up trying to rip these balls. He's gonna be pulling Novak, taking these off the rise, hugging that baseline, keeping this court short, making your options limited. And that is actually how you continue to look fast while you're getting slower. And I hate that we're talking about the demise of Carlos Alcaraz when we've already laid out that he isn't technically approaching his prime yet.
So let's put another spin on it. We're talking about people tune into Carlos Alcaraz because the next 5 years are going to be fireworks. He's just now approaching his prime. He's going to be unbelievable. Yannick Sinner is just as fast, Alvin. He is the fastest person 6 feet behind the baseline I have ever seen, ever. He hits step-ins, Alvin. 6 feet behind the baseline outside of the singles sideline. That doesn't happen. Most people are lucky to hit a step-in 5 feet within the sideline. He's hitting a step-in outside. His court coverage, it's like all his life he grew up playing 2-on-1 and the other side got the alleys and he only got the singles. He made himself get the full.
This is my normal size court. Right, this is what I always play with.
But when I go to tournaments, I get to play singles. My coach lets me play singles only in the tournaments. That's what we're looking at. And these guys, their speed and their court coverage is phenomenal. Now, I say that to say the only problem, as they get older, that will unfortunately start to drop off a little bit. So
and they'll stop doing it too. Like it's like he knows he don't want to run around. You can see you could already see the maturation in him a little bit, like kind of like every 3 months he's just doing a little bit less. Like, you know what? I'm not gonna run for that ball. It's the quarterfinals. I'm gonna let it go. Because I know I'm going to be playing in the semifinals, so we're gonna cool the Jets here a little bit.
Yep. I want to add one last thing, Alvin, and before we put a pin in this, I read an interesting article the other day by one Jim Courier, who wrote a great article. I felt that really spoke to the longevity and why the players were able to be a little bit better for a little bit longer. He mentioned himself. He mentioned Pete Sampras, even Andre a little bit. And obviously, Courier won several slams and was a great player. And he talked about their usage and their scheduling. I say usage, their scheduling of the tour for longevity. They did not play every event. They did not play all the time. In some cases, they even took a fine to take a week off, to get their body right, to make sure things were better. They didn't play all the other off-court things in the off-season. They didn't play a lot of extra doubles. They just managed. They understood the rigors of the tour, and they played in what they felt was their wheelhouse. And as a result, they were able to play good tennis for longer. He said if he had to look back at it again, he says, me and Pete and others, we played every time we could. We played as hard as we could for as long as we could. He says, but 29, 30, I was done. They ran themselves ragged, hurt, tired, dinged up, body, needing to be broke down. And mind you, Nadal was another one I thought who played about as hard as you could play, night in, night out. I think he had a knee surgery on both knees. I think he had hip surgery on both hips. I mean, the guy absolutely was a warrior, left it all out there. But again, maybe that physicality cost him a little bit. You can't say it cost him too much. He won 22 slams.
Yeah, he did all right.
I say it to say, Jim's point was they managed the schedule better over the course of their career for the longevity of it. And I never really had understood even the short-term, small, dings, right? A 20 grand fine here, a 50 grand fine there for missing that tournament. But for the long term, playing a better Grand Slam as a result of it. And so I really feel like for Carlos and for for Yannick. That's something they need to really look at and say, how can we extend our tour, our years on tour a little
Yeah.
longer to make this happen? Because that's really what you're looking at. And I'm
Let
sure.
me
Go ahead.
let me say this. I think I'm right there with you, and you're starting to see players. Some of them, like there are some that are just doing it old school style, like I'm playing every week, whatever. Like get rich or die trying, right? But the Sinners and the Alcarazes, I was thinking about Carlos today specifically, in that okay, this clay court swing that we've talked about, right? We've talked about how it's it starts in Monte Carlo, and then we go Barcelona, we go Munich. Sorry, we go Barcelona or Munich, and then we go to Madrid, and then we go to Rome before we
Go
go
to
to
Rome
Paris.
and then Paris. Rome.
That's 3 1000s in like 5 weeks,
Right.
right? And then Barcelona beating 500, but it's still tough. So I was thinking today
Darn
as
near 1,000.
yeah. I mean, I was thinking today, like as I watched like Carlos just go through this 1000, a 1 week 1000, and then do the same thing the very next week and get to the finals here in Barcelona. It's like, is he gonna play? I mean, he's probably gonna play Madrid. It's the home Masters event, right? He's gonna play that
Sure.
one. I feel like a Rome pullout's coming. Like I don't think he's gonna play Rome. Like he can't. He's playing good tennis right now, and we've talked about this before. You can't just play good tennis for 6 weeks in a row. He's gonna have to dial it back here at some point, save some of himself, and it feels like okay, Sinner's coming back. You take the shine. You're not seeing my ball till we get to Paris.
Yep.
And then even to Yannick's point, like to Yannick's like Yannick and Carlos, they both don't play warm up events before the Australian Open. They just like, we're gonna train and we're gonna come in and we're gonna figure it out. For that same reason, like try to keep the match count manageable, especially if you're expecting to be last weekend in the majority of the events.
It's a necessity in today's tour, with the rules being what they are, with the player appearance numbers being what they are, and the tour mandating it. You might even say, Alvin, and this is, and I want to have a future conversation with you about Yannick Sinner's very convenient 3-month ban and how he immediately took the ban at that time during a time that was pretty, let's just be honest, pretty convenient for him. I want to have a conversation with you later about how that may have actually helped him. And in some ways, because history will remember the slams more than the 1000s. They'll remember the slams and the rankings, which are, of course, geared toward the slams, more than they'll remember the 1000s and the 500s. And my question is, we already have talked about the little bit of unfair treatment, a little bit of preference treatment, maybe just inconsistent treatment. And that's not Yannick's fault. That's the WHO and the
That's the system. It's the system. Yeah.
fault. But my problem is that they didn't so much ding him as they gave him a little bit of a reprieve. And I have a problem with that in the sense that everyone else had to play. What if you had to play as a penalty? What if they made you play with your performance enhancing? What if they made you play 30 weeks? That's your penalty. I know that sounds crazy, Alvin.
Make you play 30 weeks. Like, cut it.
Everyone else plays 18. You chose to take a steroid? You know what? You're good. Tell you what, here's your penalty. No, save your money. Play 32 weeks this year. Anyway, anyhow. You don't, you forfeit all your prize money and your ranking from this past year. Play 32 weeks. You wanna go take some juice? Play 36 weeks.
I'll swing us back into the realm of,
I only
reality.
say it to say, if you're really going to punish a player for doing a performance enhancing, accident or no accident, make the penalty real. And you know what you're going to do? You're going to end up having your career be shortened by 5 years. You're going to end up having your rankings thing all be. You're going to really have a true. If you remember the Chris Rock joke about, make guns accessible. Make every bullet worth $5,000. You got to really hate somebody to go to spend $5,000 to. His point wasn't, and yeah, we're bordering on political, but his point was fair. Don't change the rules. Just make it be more expensive.
Right, yeah.
And that's what I'm getting at. I'm just saying, 3-month ban between Australia and the French, you almost helped him out.
Yeah, I'm gonna choose for the time being just to look past it because like we can't do anything about it now. What I will say is like for him, this is probably when he it probably leans more into the opportuneness of it. Like he wasn't gonna. I don't think he was gonna be out there kicking butt anyways. I mean, maybe he picks up, maybe he bags Indy Wells or Miami, but yeah, whatever. Who cares, right? So like of all the times, I feel like it helps him from a resting his body standpoint, but I think it hurts him in that it allowed, like specifically Carlos Alcaraz, not to make this the Carlos Alcaraz show, but allowed him to find himself and really like now come into Paris a little more himself than he was when he left Australia the last time we saw Yannick. So I back to kind of the maybe even wrapping up this conversation around the age and I think the interesting part about the players that are contending for championships right now, save for Novak Djokovic, Yannick's actually on the old end of that spectrum. He's 23, but the players who are between him and like Zverev, age-wise, you're talking about like Alex de Minaur, you're talking about Casper Ruud, we talked about Tsitsipas, we talked about FAA, right? There's not a lot of top end players ages 24 to 27 in the top 20. That is the missing generation right there. So all Carlo, like Yannick being 23, all the way down to like Artur Fils being go back to Mensik being 19 and Fonseca being 18, right? As they age up in 5 years, right? Now Fonseca is 23 and Sinner is 28, right? Nothing but space right there. It's going to take some young guys behind them to push them. Like, and they would have to be doing it ahead of the curve.
And because so many are 28, 29, you've got the 15, 16, 17s coming up that could still be relevant in that time frame, but so many of them dropping off by 30.
And I think the reason why Carlos Alcaraz was probably able to get so many so young is because the guys who are older just weren't that good.
Now that I would agree with you, or I would say, I'm going to say it a little bit more, they weren't up to the level at the time. And I think that's the best way to say it, but I hear you. But let me say this. It speaks more to Carlos's greatness than it speaks to the level being down. It speaks to Yannick's greatness more than the level is always high, Al. The level is always good.
Of course.
Those players are simply better. And that's the crazy, you call it warrior mindset, call it Mamba mentality, call it whatever you want to call it. Everybody has a different spin, a different name, a different marketing approach to it. Champions just think and play differently, period. And at that point, I mean the top champions, all of our champions, the top champions just approach it differently. And I think that's really what we're talking about. And I would look forward to this next conversation. I want you to do me a favor and write this all down. And I want us to review the same conversation.
I'm recording it. I don't even write anything.
You know what I'm talking about? No. What I mean is a year from now, we're going to redo. We're going to come back at this. What is this? April the 20th, 2026. And we're going to review the matriculation of the players that are now 28, 29, 30 that start to move on. And we're going to start seeing, because let's face it, a handful of those players in the 30s are going to start retiring any day now.
Yeah, I don't care about that.
And there may be another 15, 20 in the 29 to 32 range that may call it a day. And now who replaces them in that vacuum? The Al Fonsecas, the Jakob Mensik.
It's interesting.
A fun tour.
It's interesting because we talked about the prime being 27 to 31 and then 32 plus being, post prime.
Right.
But in the kind of, I'll call this the realm of relevance, right? Let's just say top 30 in the world.
Yep.
Top 30 in the world. There is one player between age 30 and 37. One. So it's not, and that's, so you have to start looking at that as an anomaly, right? Grigor being top 20 right now in the world is I don't know how that happened, but it happened. So like, if you just take the 30 plus guys who, there aren't many of them, and there's only 2 of them that are in the top 30, right? Take them out. Daniil Medvedev at age 29 is the oldest relevant player on tour right now. Yeah. That's wild. 29.
Yeah.
29. So,
and because he's been relevant, mind you, Dimitrov was hurt for several of those years. He's playing to get back what he had. This is what I was getting at, Alvin, is that some of those players that are still playing have a reason. Not only are they top 10, but they have a reason to keep playing. Novak's still searching for 26. Any way he can get it. Grigor's still playing because he lost 3 or 4 years. There was a lefty, Alvin, that you remember, that after a car accident came back and reached number 1 in the world.
Tomas Mustar.
Right? And you heard it right here, may not have played that long had he not been in that car accident. So there's still I'm still trying to get back to what I have. I'm still trying to get back to the tennis I missed. I think there's a storyline on each one of them. But because the rest of them are all retired. Right? And so I'm just getting at something, Alvin, that I think that is relevant. It's very pertinent, but it's also very real. After 30, there's nothing else left to prove. I've done it already. It's time for family. It's time for kicking back. I give tennis all I had. I gave tennis 20 years. Right?
I would even push back and say it's not about the after 30. It's about the after 27. The conversation is not about, and the conversation is not about like I'm still out here, that I'm out here still doing it. It's that you've already seen my best.
You've seen my best, and I can't do anything better. And the injuries,
if I could have, I would have.
I would have by now.
I would have by now. So, unfortunately, I'm looking at you, Alexander Zverev. Like I'm looking at you, Taylor Fritz. I'm looking at you, Andre Rublev. Right?
Yeah.
These are guys who are perennial top 10s, who are highly unlikely to win a Grand Slam in their careers. And I feel like this might be the last year.
They need to make a move. Alvin, you're 22 years old. Just got out of college. You're starting a company, right? You're that next gen, right? You got to work hard. You got to get in there. You got to make some waves. You got to distance yourself from some competitors. But you really got to get in there and kind of, let's face it, some hard work, right? A lot of hard work. You're 37. Have you been a director, a manager, second level supervisor, something, and you want to be? I'm going to challenge each person listening to this to say, if you haven't been that by now, what are you willing to do to become that, if that's really a goal of yours? If you haven't reached that level by now, why not? And what are you willing to do to get to it? Maybe it doesn't mean enough to you, in which case, no problem. But if it means enough to you, then what have you not shown, right? My challenge to anybody who's wanting to pursue a goal is to keep pushing and to keep doing things necessary to improve whatever it is they're trying to achieve. The only thing in your way is you and your approach to it. I'm not saying you're going to be the Novak of your career. You may not be that overall talented in whatever the categories there are, but you could certainly improve your level from 50 to 35 with a little bit of work, a little bit of tweak. I look at Federer, who got Ivan Lubicic as his coach because he kept getting torched off the backhand side because he was slicing too much. And the biggest thing Ivan told him was, whatever you were comfortable with hitting the slice, start coming over the backhand. That was anathema to Roger. He would always had a backhand slice. Why would I not slice? Lubicic says, because Rafa's killing you with the out wide serve with the slice backhand. He's killing you with it. You got to come over the top. Here's the point I'm making, Alvin. I want to help us to kind of bring tennis into the real world. Is it possible that you are so much in your comfort zone that you, whoever you are, student, player, career person, are not thinking enough about what do I need to change? What is my one-handed backhand slice that I have to address? And who is my Ivan Lubicic that I can go to and say, I got to address this? I will never be CEO. I will never be VP. I will never be. If I don't change my backhand slice, that's my safe spot. But if I'm trying to get there, I got to quit slicing.